It's the Church of Jesus Christ.
Stephen, in your book, 10 Signs of a Leadership Crash, you talk about patterns that precede moral failings. Regarding the seventh commandment, what are those patterns that precede unfaithfulness?
Well, in almost every case I've ever handled or worked with, we find out that what you feed grows, and that bad tendencies had been growing for quite some time. So this can be alcohol, this can be fantasy, this can be porn, this can be having nasty conversations about friends, about who you'd like to be with if you weren't married to so and so, those kinds of things. So what you feed grows. And then there's that bad news for men that you and I have discussed before, and that is that boredom is really, we joke about, or we've said for centuries that an idle mind is the devil's workshop. But the fact is that when we do the postmortem for men in particular about affairs and about sexual immorality, for the most part, they are drawn to the James Bond side of having affairs and misbehaving. They like the secret cell phone, they like the code language, they like the secret rendezvous. In other words, believe it or not, sheer boredom leads people to misbehave sexually. And so they have to be aware of that tendency in their life and ask themselves, and have others ask them, where are you bored? Where are you unfulfilled? And the final thing is this: bitterness. When we are bitter, we feel entitled. We're mad at the boss, we're mad at the spouse, mad at the kids, mad at the world, mad at God. We feel like we're entitled. We feel like we can take what we shouldn't have. And I have never dealt with a situation where the seventh commandment was violated, where these three factors were not huge contributors.
You've said that many leaders crash because they start leading and living a compartmentalized life, public virtue, private vice. How does this divided life erode the soul and lead to opening the doors to breaking God's moral law?
I can start with a kind of a silly image. If you put a rhinoceros in your bathroom, he's not going to stay there. He's going to knock down the door. He's going to tear down the walls. He's going to destroy your house. So if you create a part of your life where you are misbehaving, where your ethics are different from the rest of your life, then the same thing's going to happen. Sin grows, sin increases. So let's take an example. A man is a Sunday school teacher, and he tries to be relatively clean at home. But when he's on the golf course, or when he's on the basketball court, foul language, anger, violence, nasty talk in the locker room, if he allows that partitioning of his life, that divided morality, then the one will take over the other. Sin grows, sin increases. Some people think they can contain it. They think they can misbehave in part of their lives and not have it bleed into the rest of their lives, but it just does.
Few people wake up and decide that day they are going to destroy their life, their marriage, their career, their family. What are the small compromises and warning signs that people can be attentive to, and how can we catch them early?
I'll tell you that I've never dealt with situations where the following things weren't issues. Number one, eroded boundaries. All my life, I wouldn't meet alone with women, or I wouldn't talk nasty in this situation, or I wouldn't look at certain things, but my boundaries got down because I got angry, because I got bitter, because I got exhausted, because I got bored. Also, in almost every situation I've ever gotten involved in, at any socioeconomic level, any race, any gender, drugs and alcohol were part of it. The one glass of wine had become a bottle of wine, or it'd become 4 or 5 glasses of whiskey, and they really couldn't handle it, and that's when the misbehaving began. Or the prescription drugs became something more. It can be insidious, it can seem respectable, but every single situation I've ever dealt with, that was at least a contributing factor. And the final thing I think for especially Christians to keep an eye on is the unfulfilled soul is a vacuum that's going to be filled. And I realize that we all have parts of our souls that are unfulfilled. I'm not as thin as I want to be. I'm not as, maybe wealthy as I want to be. I'm not as good at what I do as I want to be. There's always part of your soul that's unfulfilled. But I'm talking about the nagging sense of lack of fulfillment, the walking through life basically unfulfilled in your sense of place in this world, unfulfilled in your marriage, unfulfilled in your sense of calling. A Christian especially needs to watch that, because the unfulfilled parts of our souls are vacuums into which we can draw in unrighteousness. I've never been involved. I keep saying it, but it's absolutely true. I've never been involved in situations, never helped situations where these factors weren't major contributors.
In today's culture, life can be rather isolating. And as we know, isolation can breed moral failure and lead to moral failure. How can Christians in particular guard against the life of secrecy, a life of temptation in isolation, and really living that double life altogether?
Well, as you know, Rob, I am absolutely fierce about saying that we need to be intentional about building a band of brothers or a band of sisters based on whether we're a man or a woman. I need other eyes on me. I'm not desiring to misbehave. I'm not going out to do anything wrong, but I may not see the changes in my life. I may not see the distortions in my soul. I may not see the trends. And so I have a band of brothers. They have my absolute permission to call my wife, check with my kids, ask me the tough questions about all the moral issues, as well as, of course, encourage me. Western life today tends towards isolation. It tends toward rust friends, friends who were, in your wedding 10 years ago, but you haven't talked too much since then, or people you knew a long time ago, but they're not actively in your life. Psychologists say we're in a sea of casual relationships. So we've got to be intentional about building bands of brothers, bands of sisters, especially as Christians, people who love us, people who are encouraging us, people who have eyes on us, and we're doing the same for them, so that we become the people we're really made to be. And we set up the boundaries we're made to set up so that we don't fall into immorality.
Finally, if you could sum up one principle from 10 Signs of a Leadership Crash that helps the believer stay faithful to God, stay faithful to their spouse, stay faithful to their career, what would that one principle be?
Well, the one principle would be make righteousness a team sport. And I've already said this in seed form. Obviously, we want to be radically committed to Jesus. Obviously, we want to be radically committed to biblical truth. But the greatest barrier I've seen work in keeping people clean and whole and happy and thriving is that they build teams of people committed to each other's righteousness and watching out for each other and coaching each other and praying for each other. Again, that band of brothers and that band of sisters. I'll say it again, make righteousness a team sport, so to speak, and involve other people in your life in God.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much. You are a man of incredible character and integrity. You're a good brother and a good man and a good friend. Thank you.
Oh, you're very kind to say that. Great to be with you, buddy.